This is the Leadership and Insurance Podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology, and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership and Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by a professional podcast host himself. So he's going to be excellent on this podcast. Man of many talents, Daniel Grimwood-Bird. How are you, sir? You well?
I'm doing very well. I don't like the expectation setting that you've put in front of me, but I'll do my very best.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I don't think I've ever called you Daniel in my life either, which felt weird as I said it, but I got tricked into it by your name being underneath you on the Zoom call. Well, Dan, before I dive in, I've known you to wear various hats in the past, but tell us about the hat you're wearing now at Nauto.
Yeah, so I am head of insurance at Nauto. Nauto is an AI company that focuses on predominantly commercial auto. We have a device that's fitted in the vehicle, and we can dive into the ins and outs of it. But the net result is that we reduce distraction, which is the leading cause of collisions in any auto, regardless of whether it's commercial or personal lines. But we reduce distraction significantly. We identify risk and we alert the drivers of risk as it's happening. And we reduce collisions by, we say 40 to 60%, but we have seen upwards of 80% reduction in collisions across our fleets.
Wow. Well, a worthwhile noble cause, of course. We've seen things like this before, but why? I was going to say on the fleet side, I'm just digging into this. It may not be something you know, but is distraction becoming an increasing problem just in driving? I imagine so with phones, but is it a specific problem with commercial fleet? Because I always just think the concentration required to drive commercially is the challenge there.
Yeah, I think, and let's be honest, we all know distraction is a problem, right? We have all been tempted to pick up our phones or fiddle with the ever increasingly complex and varied systems that we have in the vehicle. I think there's an added element in commercial fleets because of the work that they're doing. So one of the big sectors that we work with is last mile delivery. And you have all of the distractions that you have of just normally driving, but then you have, where is my next drop? What's the traffic conditions? Where's it routing me? Looking for the right house on a street. It compounds more and more, and as the world gets busier, external factors come into play a lot more as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking about when I was thinking about. I tell my Amazon man's usually distracted because he ends up throwing my stuff in a bin most of the time.
We can't do anything to help that, I'm afraid.
No, that's unfortunate. When we talk about it from an insurance perspective, head of insurance, I assume that this is sold to retailers or distributors and various things. But from an insurance perspective, how are you interacting with the market? And yeah, because what I found interesting is this isn't the first time we've seen this sort of technology. But what are insurers wanting from you, and how are they interacting with you? Building programs? Yeah, it'd be good to flesh that out a little bit more.
Yeah, see, you're right in that we have focused predominantly on selling directly to fleets in the past, and we're in more than 1,000 fleets on over 5 continents. In terms of insurers and the insurance industry generally, right? Because there's 2 parts to it, especially when you look at commercial fleets. There is the carrier, there's the insurer, and there's also the broker, and they own very different parts. And they obviously work work together, but occasionally they butt heads because they have, I guess, different mandates on what they're trying to do. So what we're doing with the industry is, I guess it's threefold, right? So there is an underwriting piece. It's can you make the fleet safer? Can you reduce the amount of accidents that occur? But also, can you just know more that's occurring? I was chatting to someone the other day who said, well, actually, telematics has been around for a while. Harsh braking is the number one indicator of whether they're likely to have a collision or not. Harsh braking isn't a behavior. No one has ever got into a car and someone just randomly slams on the brakes. It's not part of driving. Harsh braking is an outcome of something that happened before it. We've processed over 6 billion miles of data, and just to put that big number into context, that's 241,000 times around the Earth. There's a ton of data, and we have seen a lot of collisions. Harsh braking itself accounts for 2.5 to 3.5% of collisions is the primary cause of that. 70% of it is distraction in one way or another, or inattention. Now that could be drowsiness, it could be someone trying to light a cigarette, it could be being on their phone. There's a cognitive distraction piece as well. Even if you're not looking at your phone, if you've got your phone to your ear, you're still cognitively distracted. That's what's happening. So at the minute, people are underwriting on stuff that they can't see. They have an incomplete data set. So they're having to take these proxies of what risk is. Whereas we can show underwriters exactly what risk is. And beyond that, we can take that risk and we can mitigate it. So the Nauto device, it sits on the windscreen. It has an inward-facing and outward-facing camera. And it is constantly identifying risk. It is identifying pedestrians, coming across the road. It is identifying speed signs, stop signs, red lights. It is looking at the driver as to whether they're drowsy or whether they're distracted. And it's the equivalent of having a fleet manager sat in the cab with the driver all the time to say, put your phone down. There's a stop sign there. That car's pulling out. You're traveling too close to the vehicle in front. But without being a naggy backseat driver, we take the highest risk scenarios that occur and alert the driver just to those. So we are alerting them when something is going to happen, but we're not constantly badgering them to the point that they tune it out. So there's that piece. There's also a claims piece. When you have cameras, you can exonerate your drivers. You can make claims close quicker. I mean, we had one in London where our vehicle was driving along. I think it was embankment, and someone did a U-turn in front of them, and our driver T-boned them. The other party had claimed that our driver was negligent, was distracted, had smashed into them. We were able to send a video, and within a couple of hours, everything was sorted. Liability was admitted. It was done.
Yeah.
So claims close faster. There is more defensibility, which has a big impact, not only on the loss ratio, but on the costs associated with managing those claims. And then from a broker perspective, I think the constant challenge with brokers, or that brokers have, is how to add value in between renewals. Right? So they have their own risk management teams. If you can be more than just a trusted partner in trying to get the best deal for the insurance, but can actually help them to reduce their risk and then demonstrate that to the insurance carriers that the risk is improving and it's actively being managed, rather than just a passive, we just had less losses this year, we don't really know why, then you both get a better, deeper relationship with your clients, but you also get better and deeper relationships with the insurers.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Particularly, I think the broker element's really interesting, but it's where all lines of insurance have gone now. Cyber's the obvious one, but we're seeing innovations across things like management liability and health as well. It's that let's create a better risk scenario. Let's reduce risk. Let's reduce the chance of injury or claim or negligence or liability, because it's increasingly more challenging to be on the road. I mean, you were talking about driving down embankment. As someone that lives in London, I've literally just got rid of my car this week, which I was very sad about. I'm car mad, and I had a vintage Golf GTR, which I love. It's sat outside my house. I just don't drive. That's been hit 3 times in the past year. But the other thing is like driving in London is the least enjoyable experience of all time. It's just
Yeah.
and because it's so distracting, and that's without bringing other things into it. So really interesting. Um, what where does this play into the kind of autonomous vehicle piece? You might not have a view on that. I know that's not what you're dealing with. We're dealing with distracted humans, but I just wondered on the lens of that, is that something that's being considered? Because it's also another thing to be conscious of. You know, we're dealing with another type of driver in an autonomous vehicle. Yeah, so I just wondered if there's been discussed as a risk profile to be against.
Uh, so yes and no. There's probably a couple of pieces to this. So I think if we go back to when Nauto started, it was founded by Stefan Heck, who's our CEO, and he saw what was happening with autonomous vehicles in the early 2000s and 10s. And I was involved in motor. Then there was a lot of money poured into trying to understand it, and they were going to be here within the next 5 minutes, and we were never going to drive again. Stefan looked at that and said, "Well, that's not going to happen. There's regulation, there's infrastructure, there's just the tech. It's going to take longer than that. But how can you bridge that gap between this unaided human driving and full autonomy?" And that's where Nauto was born, to try and close that gap. And Stefan's been very open with his views that the AI is going to be the big jump in motor safety. So the biggest jump since the seatbelt, and maybe more of a jump since the seatbelt in terms of safety. So autonomous vehicles have certainly been part of our thesis and part of our DNA since the start. And autonomous vehicles, there is a breadth of this, right? So everything from full self-driving all the way down. And one of the really cool things that happened this year, so at CES in January in Las Vegas, we launched a partnership with Qualcomm, where Nauto's AI is now available for car manufacturers to build directly into their vehicles.
Yep.
So in the next couple of years, automotive design cycles and manufacture cycles permitting, you will see vehicles rolling off the production line that have Nauto embedded in them. Now, that is a massive shift, not to full autonomy, but in terms of, let's talk about for the insurance industry, because it's my job and it's in the podcast title. It means for the insurance industry that for the first time, any policy could have Nauto without having to install a device in there. And it means that the potential for distraction reduction becomes part of a rating table. So if Nauto is enabled within a vehicle and if it's turned on, then what does that mean for our loss ratios? What does it mean for, does it go alongside? Does it have ABS? Does it have forward collision warning? Does it have seatbelts? Does it have a NCAP 5-star rating? It's another row there, which is going to be a pretty big jump for the industry. And I think the winners of the industry will be the ones who understand it when it rolls off the line and don't wait to try and understand it once it's rolled off the line, and to try and get their critical mass of data post then. They're gonna there is no second mover advantage to that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I'm glad I teed you up now, because it was fun. There's part of me that goes, I've possibly been quite mean here, saying what does autonomous vehicle mean for anything like this? Because yeah, I mean, that's always been my belief. I mean, it's like cyber, isn't it? Like the biggest risk in cyber is the human factor, like the human failure. It's the same with driving. It's always been that case. It's that drivers will be at fault. And Yeah, and I do worry about this distracted world. I mean, I found myself like driving down to Cornwall over Christmas, and you just that guilty habit of going. I started to go and look. I started to try and press things for like Reels or like YouTube because I was bored, and I went, "What do I do?" Like, and it genuinely wasn't something I thought, "Oh, this is fine." I just didn't think about it because I'm one of these people that's obsessively on my phone. I mean, Christ, it's probably the only time I'm not posting something annoying on LinkedIn, to be honest. But although I've taken a pause for a bit because I'm going, I think this is driving me mad. I think I'm just annoying everybody. That's been really helpful, but I thank you for that, Dan, and I think it's really interesting. I think that evolution into it being inside the tech is really. I don't know if you saw me jump then, but a spider just ran across my desk, and I just absolutely out of nowhere, it just scared me for some reason. It is really pathetic. It just appeared out of the corner of my eye, which is really distracting. But
No judgment at all, Alex.
I'm scared of spiders. I just wasn't expecting it. It just made me laugh. Anyway, I'm sorry, I might have to cut that out. It's not great audio. I should capture it and put it on screen. I wanted to talk about your podcast. It's a brilliant podcast. I've had the pleasure of
Thank
being
you.
on it. Humanizing insurance. It's a great title, and I love everything about it because I think it's got so many. There's so many takes on it. It's like, we know that the consumer industry does not love insurance. It's a grudge purchase, but also like, when you're within it, I love the human aspect of it. I love how knee to knee the business still is, which is unusual. So, talk us through it. Why did you start it? What is the kind of overarching theme of it for you? And what's the journey been like? Because I say to it all the time. This is the favourite part of my job. It's barely a job. Well, I certainly don't charge for it, but I love doing it. So I wanted to know why did you do it, and what was behind it, and what's been your experience?
Yeah, so why did I start it? That's a multifaceted story. So it went through sort of a few phases. The first part was I was at dinner and I sat next to Emma Roloff, was in Hartford,
Mm,
and Emma was like, you need to do a bit more. You need to show people what you're doing. You need to, and I have a big running joke that I have a face for radio and a voice for silent movies. So I'm not really a per video on LinkedIn kind of person. So I thought, what is it could I do? And what do I like doing? And what I like doing is storytelling. I think
mm,
that's why I ended up in salesy roles. Um, but actually, it'd be much better if I could just facilitate the story and have other people tell their story. That'd be much more interesting. And that evolved a little bit more. And I got to podcasts by listening to a ton of podcasts. I listened to your podcast plus a bunch of others
mm,
around insurance, and they often start off in the same way with, here is Joe Bloggs. He was a US Army Ranger, went into Delta Force, has walked on the moon, and then set up this new platform for D&O insurance, which we're going to talk about. And I found I didn't want to talk, I didn't want to listen to that. I wanted to listen to everything else and work out how they'd got there. Um, and and that sort of bumbled around in my head for probably a year. And then was it probably a year ago, 14 months ago, Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, was shot in New York. And I saw amongst the grief of it all, just the vile comments that were there about people in insurance deserve it, and insurance is this cruel, wicked, villainous character that
mm,
just tries to screw everyone over. And I didn't feel protective about the industry because Lord knows we're not perfect, but I
mm,
did feel protective of the people within it because I've been in the industry for 20 years now, and I can't think of a single person that I've met that I haven't that hasn't truly cared about what they were doing and
mhm,
about trying to solve some really complex problems, and a lot of them just about trying to make the world a better place.
mhm,
And that that really cemented that I've got to do it. And it started in my first podcast release was April last year, so coming up for nearly a year now. It's been an amazing journey. It's been fantastic to hear so many stories, and there's such a breadth of people in insurance that come from completely different backgrounds and worlds, and then you find the commonality of people do care, people do want to try and make the world a better place. Almost no one dreams of being in insurance, wants to be in insurance. We all found ourselves here by accident, but then we find purpose, and while we got here by accident, we purposefully stay to continue to do that work. And yeah, I mean, it's I'm not going to lie, it's a slog, trying to find guests, learning how to edit a podcast, learning how to build artwork for it, trying to set up a LinkedIn page, trying to get it so people know that you're actually doing it without annoying everyone by posting every day that you're doing it. And trying to just be, I guess, authentic to what I was trying to do, and not become part of the noise of insurance podcasts, and try and make it give something back and not just be a midlife crisis for me.
Not too young for a midlife crisis, aren't you, Dad?
I think age is how you feel, Alex, and I'm certain.
Oh, you're way past your midlife crisis then, Jeff. Really. He's going to be tucking you up in an old paper. So, no, well, that means I'm probably having my quarter life crisis then, if it's how you feel. No, I totally I hear you on that. I think authenticity is a real thing in what you do. Like I genuinely love doing this, and I think it comes across, and I think it's the same when I listen to your podcast. It's like you're genuinely interested, and I think that's what's hard about podcasting is getting guests that you genuinely care what they've got to say. And I know that sounds like it sounds like it sounds like I'm being critical of certain people, going, "Oh, certain people don't care." It's not about that. It's like, I can't. I'm very strict on people coming on and going, "I want you to be able to talk about your business," and of course, part of that is it's promotional, but don't come and pitch. If you pitch at me, it's the most boring thing in the world, and people can't listen to you. And we do have people that, despite that advice, come on and give this massive like ram it down everyone's throats, and I'm like, what part of you thinks that's going to sell it to anybody, rather than have a really human conversation about this topic. Like, for example, like we didn't plan the stuff about Nauto. We said we talk about it. We talk about autonomous vehicles. It becomes a really interesting kind of sales point for the business because the integration is going to be really interesting. But that's not why. That wasn't. That was a genuine part of the conversation that came up. Do you find it struggling to? Do you find the struggle is to find the right note with some people? Have you had any like moderate? Have you had any bad guests? We don't have to name them, but where it's just been hard work.
No, I don't think so. And I think the reason is the format, right? We're not talking about their business. We're not talking about what they're trying to sell. We're talking about their past experience. And spoiler for people coming on the podcast, I don't really prep with anyone. I don't send them any questions in advance because it's about you. It's your specialist subject. If there ever was one, what you've done and how you felt during those times should be something that you're able to talk about. But also I don't want it to be scripted. I want it to be pretty raw and sometimes emotional, sometimes incredibly funny. But everyone's story is fascinating, and that doesn't that's not just the guest that I've chosen. I genuinely believe that everyone's personal story is fascinating and has fascinating aspects to it that you can really dive into and that people can relate to, because life is a funny thing, and it's full of ups and downs, and it's I like to think that every story that we tell, there's one thing that someone can get from it. And hopefully, one of the things that I'd like to happen is that a young person coming into the industry listens to it and goes, there's a ton of opportunity here and I can make the world a better place. And I didn't know that existed, or I didn't think about how to how I could come back from this setback until I listened to that and related to it.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that now. When I started work decades ago, 20 years ago, I I learned so much from the people that sat around me in the office that were more
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
Just flipping comments, little stories, how they dealt with stuff that I could physically see. And actually, with remote work and global work, you don't see that. You see meetings that have an agenda, and you see the reaction to the points that are there, and then it goes off. You don't see how someone turns up to the work after their dog died, and actually that really strong person is really vulnerable for a bit, and how they manage that vulnerability,
Mm,
or just how people, the general strains of being in a team, because it's not
mm,
always roses and butterflies. How
mm.
does that come? So if I can tell some stories about that and showcase how people react and respond, and that helps someone,
Mm,
then great. That's
mm.
amazing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I didn't. I say I've taken a bit of a break from LinkedIn and not put so much out there, and that was a very personal choice in that and without sharing everything on here. The start of my year has been pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like broken legs, deaths in the family, like additional family situations that have been really difficult, and that's alongside the busiest portfolio of work Finbo's ever had, and it was hard. But what makes this industry particularly lovely, or what makes the human connections really lovely, is that I had two clients like just ram stuff in my diary, and they had my calendar link, and they put stuff in my diary, and I kept I did because it was I was this urgent. I went, can I move it? I moved it, and they just put the time in the diary to check in that was all right. So they hadn't seen. Usually can't turn LinkedIn without seeing you. Are you okay? And these are people that were clients of mine, and they're now friends, of course, and that's where we are. But it's because they've got to know me outside of Alex the Duck podcast and does headhunting. It's just like, oh, they've got to know the human me, and it's that's a lovely thing. And ironically, I was about to post on LinkedIn about it, but I didn't. Just to say, people in this industry are really nice. But I think your point about people coming into the industry, particularly about progression, is a good one. Dan, I knew we'd do this because we're two podcasters, so we like to talk too much. So we are at time. So look, I would urge everyone to go and listen to Dan's podcast. Obviously, if you're in the related field of commercial, also talk to him about Nauto as well. But it's a really good podcast. It's very different in structure to mine. I'm on it, so if you like listening to me and Dan, then you can get more of that on this podcast as well. But very different conversation. But Dan, thank you very much for being a guest on the Leadership Insurance podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man.